Before I even begin, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on your notifications. And, most importantly, stay with me until the very last second of this story. Because what I am about to tell you is not just a story. It is a confession. It is a wound. It is a journey into the darkest corners of love, betrayal, and survival. And when you hear the truth, the full truth, you will realize that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who push us into the deepest pits of pain. Because I promise you, nothing about this story is ordinary. I woke up that night with a taste in my mouth I couldn't explain. It was bitter, heavy, almost metallic, like something had been poured into me, something I did not invite. The lights in the bedroom were dim, glowing against the marbled walls of my Lagos mansion. The air conditioning hummed softly, almost too softly, and then I felt it, the weight, the heat, a body that was not my husband's. For a second my brain refused to accept it. Whoa, this couldn't be real. I tried to move, but my limbs felt like sandbags, heavy and unresponsive. My heart hammered in my chest, screaming at me to run, to fight, to scream. But I couldn't, because whatever he put in my drink, whatever drug slipped into my glass of wine, had stripped me of my power. And that was when the truth sliced through me like a blade. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a thief. It wasn't a nightmare. It was his cousin. The cousin who was always around, smiling too politely, laughing too eagerly at family gatherings. The cousin I thought was just another relative in the long line of extended family that floated in and out of our Lagos mansion. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. But inside, my soul was wailing, tearing, cracking apart in ways I never knew it could. And then, as if the wound needed salt, I saw him, my husband, standing in the corner of the room, watching, not saying a word. His face calm, his arms folded, like a man supervising a job. That was the night my world collapsed. That was the night love died. But let me take you back, because you need to understand how a woman like me, a woman raised with pride, ambition, and dreams, could fall into a life where her husband drugged her and invited another man into their bed. I was born in Lagos, into a city that teaches you early that power is everything, that appearances matter more than truth, that the shine of wealth often blinds people from the rot behind closed doors. I grew up in Ikoyi, not in the sprawling mansions, but in a modest house tucked between those who had and those who wanted to have more. I watched women with diamond necklaces sweep into church on Sunday mornings, their perfumes filling the air, their chauffeurs waiting outside. I told myself, one day I will sit in the back of a black-tinted car too. I wasn't greedy. I wasn't shallow. But I knew that survival in Lagos demanded more than just kindness and hard work. It demanded alignment with power. So when I met him, the man who would become my husband, I thought God had finally rewarded me. He was tall, soft-spoken, with eyes that seemed to promise safety. He was from one of those families that people whispered about in the city. Old money, generational wealth, the kind of people who could make problems disappear with a single phone call. I didn't fall in love with his money. I fell in love with what I thought his money represented. Stability, protection, a shield from the chaos of Lagos life. And when he asked me to marry him, in a private garden filled with white roses and fairy lights, I said yes without hesitation. Little did I know, I was saying yes not just to a man, but to a web of secrets, lies, and betrayals too dark for the human heart to carry. First, it was beautiful. Trips to Dubai, weekends in Cape Town, dinners in Victoria Island where waiters bowed so low you wondered if they would ever stand straight again. We were the picture-perfect couple. The kind people used as examples at weddings. May your union be like theirs. But behind the Instagram smiles and the diamond-studded nights, there was silence. A kind of silence that grew each year, wrapping itself around us like smoke. We tried for children. Oh, how we tried. Each month, hope would bloom in me like a stubborn flower, and each month it would die again, leaving me emptier than before. Doctors whispered. Tests were run. Pills were prescribed. But nothing worked. And slowly my husband began to change. His laughter dulled. His patience thinned. His eyes, once soft, once full of warmth, became sharp, restless, cold. I thought it was the pressure. I thought it was the weight of family expectations, of Lagos society where children were not just blessings but proof of masculinity, wealth, and legacy. But I didn't know. I didn't know the depths of his desperation. I didn't know the monster he was becoming. Until that night. The cousin left the room like a thief after the crime. My husband didn't move from the corner. He just looked at me with a face I couldn't recognize anymore. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, almost businesslike. And though I can't tell you his exact words, because this story is not about quoting dialogue, but about remembering feelings, I can tell you how his voice felt. It felt like betrayal wrapped in calmness. Felt like the final nail in a coffin. It felt like the death of the woman I once was. I lay there, broken, poisoned, my body no longer mine. And in that moment I understood something. This was no accident. This was not a mistake. This was a plan. A plan my husband had made. Plan where love had no place. A plan where I was not a wife, but a vessel. And that was the night the seed of my pain was planted. People see Lagos mansions and think, paradise. They see private jets and think, power. They see diamond rings and think, love. But they don't see the shadows inside. They don't see the nights when a woman lies broken on silk sheets, her trust poisoned, her soul shattered. That was my night of betrayal. The night my husband drugged my drink and brought his cousin to impregnate me. The night my marriage became a cage. And yet, this was only the beginning. Because the truth, the real shocking truth behind why he did it, was still waiting for me. If you have been with me since the beginning, then stay. Stay until the very last second, because what you are about to hear is the reason behind the betrayal. The reason my husband drugged me. The reason he brought his cousin into my bed. The truth that turned my love story into a nightmare. So subscribe now. Turn on your notifications. Because every part of this story will cut deeper than the last. The morning after was worse than the night itself. Because the night was a fog, a poisoned haze of betrayal I could not fight. But the morning was clarity. It was light pouring into the room, touching everything I wanted to forget. It was my body aching with a memory I never consented to. I lay there, staring at the high ceiling of my bedroom in Ikoyi, the chandelier glinting like a cruel witness. The silence pressed against me like a weight. And then it hit me. I was not a wife anymore. I was not even a woman anymore. I was a vessel for an heir. An heir that my husband desperately wanted, no matter the cost. I rose slowly, my legs trembling, the marble floor cold against my skin. I went into the bathroom and looked into the mirror. What I saw was not me. My face was pale, my eyes swollen from silent tears. My lips trembled with words that would never be spoken aloud. And behind my reflection I saw it, the death of the woman I used to be. That morning I didn't scream. I didn't shout. I didn't even confront him. Because some betrayals are too heavy for words. The days that followed felt like walking through a museum of ghosts. The mansion was beautiful, yes. High ceilings, imported furniture, cars that roared like lions waiting in the garage. But beauty means nothing when the walls echo with lies. I moved through the house quietly like a shadow. And my husband, he moved as if nothing happened. As if drugging me, betraying me, and shattering me was simply necessary. He would dress in his tailored suits, his wristwatch gleaming under the Lagos sun, his scent of power filling the air. To the world he was the perfect man. To me he was a stranger with blood on his hands. But I could not live in ignorance forever. I needed answers. I needed to know why. Because betrayal is a wound, yes. But unanswered betrayal, that is poison. Started with whispers, small comments at family gatherings, glances between relatives, women who lowered their voices when I entered the room. First I thought it was pity. They were whispering because they knew what happened to me, because they saw the cracks in my marriage. But then I realized something darker. They weren't whispering about me. They were whispering about him. My husband, the man everyone bowed to, The man who carried the weight of his family name like a crown. The whispers said, he was not who the world thought he was. The whispers said, his power was borrowed. The whispers said, his manhood, his ability to father children, was a shadow, not a truth. In Lagos, secrets travel faster than light. They slip into cocktail parties in Banana Island. They hide in the corners of luxury weddings in Victoria Island. They sit in the smoke-filled rooms of politicians and businessmen. And the secret about my husband was simple, yet devastating. He could not have children. He was sterile. And his family had known for years. I remember the first time it clicked in my mind. It was not a moment of revelation with trumpets and thunder. It was quiet. It was the way his mother looked at me, her eyes sharp, demanding, waiting. It was the way his uncle spoke about continuing the family name. It was the way his cousin, yes, that cousin, was always around, always too close. And then it all made sense. That night, the betrayal. It was not just a crime of passion. It was not just my husband losing his mind. It was a plan. Family plan. I was to be the vessel. They chose me to carry the bloodline forward, even if the blood came from another man. Even if it came from his cousin. You see, in Lagos, wealth is not just money. It is legacy. It is dynasty. It is the story of families who build empires and guard them with claws sharper than any predator. And my husband's family was one of them. Old money. Landowners. Investors. Men who sat at tables where the fate of entire businesses, entire cities, were decided. But power like that comes with rules. And the first rule is this: bloodlines must never end. No matter the cost. I was not chosen because of love. I was chosen because my womb was strong. Because my body could carry what his body could not give. And when I realized that the man I married, the man I loved, had seen me not as a wife but as a tool. Broke. I could not tell anyone. Who would believe me? Who would dare speak against a family so powerful, so feared? In Lagos, silence is currency. People keep quiet because power buys silence, and silence keeps power alive. I walked through events dressed in silk gowns, my face painted with smiles that weren't mine. I stood beside him while cameras flashed, while the world called us perfect. But inside I was hollow. Inside I carried a secret that was crushing me alive. Every night I lay on that bed staring at the ceiling, asking God, why me? Why was I chosen to carry this weight? Why was my womb turned into a battlefield of lies? And though no answer came, I knew one thing. I could not stay silent forever. One evening, as the sun set over the Lagos lagoon, painting the sky in hues of gold and blood, I felt it. The shift. The crack inside me widening. The realization that silence was no longer survival. It was death. Because if I stayed silent, they would destroy me. If I stayed silent, I would lose myself completely. The betrayal was not just about one night. It was about a lifetime of lies. A dynasty built on secrets. A family willing to sacrifice me for the sake of their legacy. And as I stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker to life, I made a silent vow. I would find the full truth. I would uncover every hidden thing. And when I did, the empire they built on lies would tremble. That was the family secret. The reason behind the night of betrayal. The reason my husband drugged me and brought his cousin into my bed. 'Cause he could not give me a child. Because his family could not afford the shame of a bloodline ending. But what they did not know was this. I was no longer the naive girl who said yes in a garden of white roses. I was becoming something else. Something stronger. Something dangerous. If you have been walking with me since the night of betrayal, then stay. Because what I am about to share is the breaking point. The place where silence becomes poison. The place where a woman who has been crushed begins to rise again. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on your notifications. And most importantly, stay until the last second. Because the darkest part of this story is here. And so is the beginning of my strength. The days after the truth sank into me felt like drowning with my eyes open. Everywhere I turned, The weight of betrayal pressed down harder. The chandeliers in the mansion no longer shone with beauty. They glared at me like reminders of the cage I lived in. The silk sheets on my bed no longer felt soft. They burned my skin with the memory of that night. And my husband. He moved through the house as if nothing had happened. As if betrayal was not betrayal. As if pain was not pain. As if I was not a woman but an object, a vessel that could not protest. The silence between us was louder than any scream. When I discovered I was pregnant, my heart split into two. One half was joy, the instinctive joy of a woman who had longed for a child. The miracle of life growing inside me was something no betrayal could fully erase. But the other half was agony, because every kick, every flutter, every heartbeat inside me was a reminder of the night I lost my soul. A reminder that this child was not born from love, but from a plan. Cruel, calculated plan. I would sit in the nursery, surrounded by toys bought from London, rocking chairs carved from Italy, cribs polished like thrones. And I would cry, because I knew that while the world would celebrate this child, I would always know the truth. And the truth was a knife I carried every day. People say Lagos is the city that never sleeps, that it is alive with noise, with light, with endless possibilities. But for me, Lagos was loneliness. Because in the midst of its glittering towers and champagne-filled nights, there was no one I could trust. My friends. They were blinded by the diamonds I wore, the cars I drove, the photographs of a life they thought was perfect. My family. They told me to be strong, to endure, to protect the name of my marriage. And his family. They were the architects of my pain. They had chosen me not for love, but for my womb. And now that I was carrying their heir, they treated me like a priceless vase. Precious but voiceless. In that silence, depression grew. It crawled into my bed at night. It whispered in my ear during the day. It pressed down on my chest until breathing felt like labor. One night, I stood on the balcony of our Ikoyi mansion, looking down at the city below. The lagoon shimmered with reflections of streetlights and headlights, cars honking as they rushed through the endless Lagos traffic. I thought of how easy it would be to lean forward. Just lean a little more. Let gravity do the rest. Let the pain end. Because what was left of me? My body was no longer mine. My life was no longer mine. My future was trapped in a dynasty built on lies. And for a moment I wanted to disappear. I wanted the city to swallow me whole. But then I touched my belly. And I felt the kick. Gentle, but real. And in that moment I realized. I was not alone. There was life inside me. Life that did not ask to be born in betrayal. Life that deserved love no matter how it came into this world. So I stepped back. I closed the balcony door. And I whispered to myself, not in words but in the language of survival, that I would not die. Not yet. Survival is a strange thing. At first it feels like weakness, like you are just clinging to life because you don't know how to let go. But over time it hardens into something stronger. Each day of pregnancy taught me resilience. Each doctor's visit reminded me that my body, though wounded, was still powerful. Each night of tears reminded me that I still had a heart, even if it was broken. And slowly, a new thought began to grow in me. What if I could turn this pain into power? What if the very thing they used to break me, my womb, my child, could become the weapon that freed me? I did not have all the answers then. But I knew this. Silence was killing me. And if I kept quiet, their plan would succeed. I would become nothing more than the obedient wife, the silent vessel, the broken woman. I could not allow that. The breaking point came one afternoon, in the quiet of the nursery. The sun poured through the curtains, dust particles floating in golden streams of light. I sat in the rocking chair, my swollen belly before me, my hands tracing the curve of the child I carried. And suddenly I felt it. Not just the kick of life inside me, but the fire of life inside my soul. I realized that my story was not over. That betrayal had not ended me. That pain had not silenced me. Yes, I was wounded. Yes, I was scarred. But I was not dead. And if I was still alive, then I still had the power to choose. Fight. To expose. To reclaim myself from the dynasty that had stolen me. That afternoon I made a vow. I would no longer be silent. I would no longer be obedient. I would no longer be their vessel. I would rise. And when I did, their empire of lies would tremble. That was my breaking point. The moment I stepped back from the edge of death. The moment I decided to fight for life, for truth, for myself. Because survival is not enough. Healing requires more. And I was ready to begin the war that healing demanded. But if you think deciding to fight was easy, you are wrong. Because the battle ahead was darker, bloodier, and more dangerous than anything I had faced before. Before I tell you how this story ends, pause. Breathe. And if you haven't subscribed, do it now. Because stories like this are not just entertainment. They are survival. They are testimony. They are the truth dressed in scars. Stay until the very last second. Because the ending of my story is not just about pain. It is about power. It is about healing. It is about a woman who rose from ashes. The day I gave birth, Lagos was alive with rain. Thunder rolled over the lagoon like a drumbeat. The sky wept in torrents that drenched the streets, washing dust into mud, flooding the gutters, slowing the endless traffic. Inside the hospital room I screamed. Not just from labor but from everything that brought me here. From betrayal. From silence. From depression. From pain that had no language. And then, silence. A silence so heavy I thought the world had stopped. And then a cry. Fragile, but alive. When they placed the baby in my arms, my heart broke again. Because in his face, I saw both the curse of betrayal and the blessing of life. I saw pain and possibility colliding. I whispered nothing. But in my soul I made a promise. This child will never know the chains that bound me. This child will be love, even if his beginning was born of betrayal. His family celebrated like victors at war. The mansion filled with champagne, with laughter, with the clinking of glasses and the perfume of expensive colognes. Gifts poured in from politicians, businessmen, men whose names carried weight in the city. Cameras flashed. Magazines printed headlines. The heir is born. And there I was, sitting quietly in silk, holding the child, watching them dance around me as if I were invisible. Because in their eyes, I had served my purpose. The vessel had delivered. The dynasty was safe. But what they didn't know was this. The woman they thought was broken was not broken anymore. She was awake. She was watching. And she was ready. It did not happen in a single explosion of rage. It happened slowly, carefully, the way a storm gathers strength before it finally tears the sky apart. I began with silence. The silence that once killed me became my weapon. I let them believe I was still obedient. I let them think I had surrendered. But inside I was gathering everything. Evidence. Memories. The strength to stand. And then one evening when the family gathered in the mansion, uncles, aunts, cousins, business associates, I stood. My voice did not shake. My heart did not tremble. I told them everything. Not in whispers. Not in fear. But in truth so raw it sliced through their lies like glass. I told them about the drug drink. I told them about the cousin. I told them about the betrayal that created the heir they were now worshipping. And for the first time I saw fear in their eyes. Not because they cared about me, but because they knew the truth was a weapon they could not control. Powerful families in Lagos survive on one thing: silence. And when silence is broken, cracks form. The empire they built began to shake. The whispers they once controlled now grew louder. Business partners looked at them differently. Magazines printed rumors they couldn't fully deny. And inside their home, trust collapsed. My husband's face, once so calm, so controlled, hardened into stone. He avoided my eyes. 'Cause he knew. He knew I was no longer his wife. I was his undoing. But exposing them was not the end. Because pain does not disappear the moment truth is spoken. Pain lingers. Pain claws at your chest in the quiet hours of the night. Healing was slow. It was nights of rocking my child while tears streamed silently down my face. It was mornings of forcing myself to get out of bed when depression begged me to stay under the covers. It was therapy. It was prayer. It was writing in journals that no one would ever read. Healing was not a straight line. It was messy. It was ugly. But it was real. And piece by piece I began to feel whole again. The greatest revelation was this. I thought betrayal had destroyed me. But in truth, betrayal revealed me. It stripped away illusions. It burned down the cage I had built around myself. It forced me to see who I really was. A woman stronger than any dynasty, stronger than any man, stronger than any lie. I realized I did not need their wealth. I did not need their name. I did not even need their approval. All I needed was myself. And the child in my arms. Because love was not dead. Had only changed shape. Now lived in me, for me, through me. So this is the end of my story. My husband drugged me. His cousin betrayed me. His family used me. But I survived. And survival became victory. Because I walked out of their mansion not as a broken vessel, but as a woman reborn. And if you are listening to me now, broken by your own betrayal, I want you to know. You can rise too. You can heal. You can walk away from the cages they build around you. Because betrayal is not the end. Sometimes it is the beginning of who you were always meant to be. So subscribe to this channel. Stay with me. 'Cause there are more stories to tell. Stories of love, of pain, of survival, of healing. And if this story touched you, share it. Because someone out there is drowning in silence. And they need to hear that survival is possible. This was my truth. My confession. My healing. And now, it is yours too.